Hey, it's Freitag. In this podcast, we interview business owners in New Hampshire and beyond to get their perspective on work, growth, and of course, the weekend. Join our host, Freitag marketing owner Jan Ziegler, as he interviews fascinating guests. We hope you'll enjoy this episode.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of It's Freitag. Today I'm joined by Gina Burke, who is the newly appointed, and this is a long title, Executive Director at the Monadnock Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Board.
Belonging.
Coalition. See, the acronym is killing me. But welcome, Gina. You've been advocating for sort of diversity and inclusion for a long time here in the region. I think a lot of people know you, but I'm really excited to have you here now.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Usually I'm a podcast host, so this feels really good to be on this side of the microphone.
Take it because I have all the pressure for the good questions.
Exactly.
So you grew up in New Hampshire, kind of like, or within an hour from here. Like, tell me a little bit about sort of where you're coming from and how you ended up here.
I actually grew up in Leominster, Massachusetts. So I am everything that's true about Massachusetts. I'll probably say wicked at some point during this podcast. Still in me, deep in my core, but my best friend went to Keene State College. She was a couple years ahead of me, and I would come and visit and party with her, and then I was like, I like it here. I want to go to college here. And then my senior year, I met my husband, and we traveled a little bit, but ultimately wanted to raise our family here in Keene. So we've been here this round 12 years.
That's really cool. And so then after college, psychology, I think, according to your LinkedIn, you went and started working for a tech company in community engagement. Tell me a bit about that, because that was a long stint for you, right? Like, you did that for a while.
Well, so you're right. So I did get my degree in psychology, and I started in the mental health field. So I was working as a residential counselor and seeing little clients like in their home that were really struggling with long-term mental health struggles. And we were essentially teaching them life skills, hoping that they could live on their own someday. They were living in a group home environment. And then I got pregnant, and we were moving closer to family. We were moving up to Claremont, New Hampshire, and I had to quit that job. I had to sell my really cool Volkswagen Bug because I was going to be a mom now, and I had to get a Subaru, and just was like changing everything about my life. And I actually got hired at the tech company that you mentioned through a staffing agency called Employee Moms. I was like a brand new mom and knew instantly, like, I can't be a stay-at-home mom. And I didn't know which way that was going to go. And I think that's a decision a lot of women grapple with. But I was like, yeah, I need to work. So they hired me for a sales support role. And I was just like, I just want to get out of the house. I literally don't care what I do here. And there was 40 people. It was a small New Hampshire startup. It was a room like this. It's like you could see everybody in the office, and it was just like young, cool people. It just was good energy. It was a good vibe. And then I just kept growing with the company. I always sat next to the woman that was doing our philanthropy. So from the jump, when they started our company, there was always this philanthropic component. We weren't an established nonprofit yet, but we were always giving back to the community, and it was just part of the culture. And that's really what drew employees to the organization, was like, wow, you guys are doing cool stuff. Like, we were just thinking beyond sales and tech and the selling to the government. And eventually we became an established 501c3, and I essentially did the marketing, and she was acting sort of as like the executive director, and we built all the programming and our scholarships, and then that just continued to grow. So I was there for 17 years. Near the end, I was doing corporate social responsibility. Like, we really were thinking about the employee experience, but our impact on the environment and the greater community, and just how we could be making a difference.
But that's an unusual company, right? Because like, most tech startups don't start out with philanthropic ambitions. Like, they mostly want to just grow really big, really fast and sell to somebody else. Was that just like their mission, or like where did that come from? Was it they were super tied into the community? I mean, Claremont's also not like a tech hub.
No, well, so we originally started in Lebanon. So when I officially started working with them, we were in Lebanon, New Hampshire, which is like a little bit more up 91. Then we renovated a mill in partnership with the Common Man franchise. So like the Common Man Inn and Restaurant and these architect partners, and it took us like 5 years. This mill was like falling into the river, got that up and running in Claremont and essentially moved our headquarters there. But no, it really came down to leadership. I mean, our leadership knew that it was important to think about community from the jump, and it literally instilled in me how important that is. I mean, you and I have chatted about this before. Like, the companies locally that care about community and are invested in this city beyond their work and getting clients and making money are the most successful. I literally did my whole capstone on this exact topic. Like, I care so much about this, but it's because I learned about it, watching it happen firsthand at the success. We grew to, when I left, I told you there was 40 people when I started. There was 900 employees. We were $1 billion organization. And I would do onboarding. So every time I would speak to someone new, they're like, I'm here because of your culture. I'm here because of what you guys do for the community. I'm here because of your big community service days and your volunteer work and the fact that you pay people to go volunteer. Like, that's the stuff that people care about. Like, we have to find purpose in our work beyond our jobs. To me, that's up to the organization to set up that structure and that culture and vision. And if you're not thinking about your business like that, you're literally missing out.
And I think there's a few other businesses around here that function this way, right? I had Mark Bowden here, so like SPW, I think is exemplary.
Gold standard.
Yeah, exactly, gold standard. But I think, why do you think it's so important? I understand how it is for employee attraction and retention. That's obviously is important because it's a lot more fun to volunteer than it is to just, work 40 hours a week. But why do you think it's also important to for business growth, like for sales, basically? How does that impact sales?
Well, so companies that are set up this way, first of all, employees never want to leave because they're getting fulfilled from work. So I don't know if you've ever had a job where you're like, this is just a job, and you feel like you have to find your sort of purpose and meaning outside of work.
I'm not wired that way. Like, I have work problems. So like my jobs were always like that's not how I work, but I get it.
Yeah. So I don't know where that came from for me. I think it was when I worked at Red River that my DNA was shifted, where if you're not being really fulfilled at work and it's just not fulfilling your sort of mission back to the community, you kind of have to find it outside of work. But if you can meld those two together, but I think employees in environments like that are happier. I think it attracts the community because, again, what I think about is wanting to service businesses that I know are giving back to the community. So it just naturally draws people that are into that kind of thing, which I think in the end increases revenue. But I don't know. I just think there's something really special about businesses that are structured in that manner.
Okay, and so let's shift a little bit and talk about what you do now, because you got a new role, which is exciting. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that and talk a little bit about DEIB and everything that's happening there, because it's wild times for that.
It is wild times. So I was at that tech company for 17 years, and the last 5 years, we were sold to a private equity firm, and that culture that I talked about, started to leave us. There was a few of us that were trying so hard to hold on to it because we knew how important it was for the business and who we were as an organization. But the people who purchased the company didn't care about that. So I was laid off in July of 24, along with 80 other people that round, but they got rid of all of those departments that I spoke of. No more corporate social responsibility, no more DEI program. I was leading that the last couple years of my tenure. No more nonprofit, none of that work, the volunteer work, all those things that made the employees want to stay left. So not to mention, then there was a mass exodus after that. Once all those programs left the organization, so did the people.
Of course, but I mean, that's where they came in the first place.
That's why they came. So when I look at LinkedIn now, I'm like, who are all of you? Like, none of them are familiar. We had people that had been there 25, 30 years. They're all gone. So sad. It's literally, and they closed the Claremont office. Like, just so many things that are just like bad for business in the world. And so at that point, I really had to do some soul searching. Like, what am I trying to do next? And I knew, and again, I think all of this was instilled in me at that company, but I knew my work had to be purpose-driven. It had to be community-centered. And I didn't want to work for just some organization in Nebraska. It was like, I want to be here in Keene or close to it. I need to be in this community, and I want to be serving and helping here. And so I took an interim role over at Cedar Crest, which was amazing. I'm on their board, and I learned so many things about fundraising and all. You don't realize how much skills you learn at a place until you leave it and then go somewhere else, and you're like, oh, I learned a whole bunch of stuff that's like helpful, especially for nonprofits. And then I sort of was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go out on my own and start my own business. So I started Shine Bright Strategies, which is like a nonprofit, really social entrepreneurship firm, social impact. And I have 2 clients right now, the Monadnock DEIB, like you mentioned, where I can serve as like the part-time executive director. And I'm over at Monadnock Family Services, back sort of in mental health, this sort of full circle moment, but just really helping with their branding, marketing, and communications, that kind of thing. Hopefully about to start one more client. I'll be fully booked at that point and like off and running. But we are living in really weird times, and nonprofits need a lot of help and support in so many ways. I mean, obviously, funding is super scary. If you say the word diversity, equity, or inclusion, your funding is being cut.
So it's like basically they have, only bad choices, but also just bad choices, because it's either, even if you believe in, DEI and you want to advocate for it, you're like, well, but I can't afford to lose this funding because need the money, otherwise the organization. If you have, whether you have full-time staff or you have programming, nobody or barely any nonprofits can survive without their federal funding.
For real. We're literally in such a lose-lose. We talk about this as like a pendulum, right? So 2020, we had George Floyd murders, we had Breonna Taylor. Businesses, including my old tech company, were like, we have to have a DEI program. There's no way around this. Like, if we don't, you're missing out. So a lot of organizations stood something up, but they didn't know how to do it. And they certainly didn't know how to embed it into the systems, structures, and the policies within their organization. It might have been a training program. Maybe they started employee resource groups. But it was just these one-off-y type things. Maybe they started to celebrate holidays or recognize Juneteenth, or we're going to do a big campaign for Black History Month, but it really wasn't embedded like in the systems. All those programs are kind of struggling right now, right? It wasn't brought in from the top. Leadership wasn't bought in on really why this is so important for our employee base, and they weren't changing the structures of the organization, and all those programs are basically stopped. And
well, I think also there's probably like this great, like all these other factors that are contributing, because I think when that all was happening, like it was like the job market was so tight for employers to find people that they were like, we cannot afford to lose an employee to a company that is like better on this DEI stuff, that like they feel like if they are, I don't know, maybe they're gay and they feel like more at home in a different company that is like, hey, this is okay, you celebrate, like Pride Month is a thing here. Like they couldn't afford to lose their employees. So I think it was like a lot of it was also just like, well, we need to keep our people and this is what we have to do to keep our people. And I think because the job market's changing a little bit and now suddenly you can get applicants for your openings again, it is also less important in this very transactional way that is not idealistic at all. It's just like, how do we attract and retain people, which is easier now, I think, than it was 5 years ago. Do you think that's true?
I don't know. I think your first part is definitely true. I think it was competitive, and you needed organizations, like I was talking about with my tech company, that like either really cared about community or purpose or volunteerism, or thought about the fact that their workforce is diverse in all kinds of ways, and they have policies, programs, and procedures in place to support them, because we are not all dominant culture, And we need to support everybody within our orgs.
I think it's like, if you think of, for example, like about like, especially, I don't know, Red River, like you think about IT and developers. Like developers were like the scarcest of resources 5 years ago. Now they're laying them off because they're like, oh, AI can code this. Right. And like suddenly, well, like 5 years ago, you should have told every high school kid, become a developer. Like that is the gold mine of the future, because nothing gets paid better and is more scarce. And that's like shifting. Now developers are not all that scarce anymore. Right. And I think that's like, I think so much is shifting like economically that also has an impact on just like how important people think DEI is.
What I know is, to my core, I would say, oh my God, this is always going to be important. And yes, the pendulum is swinging. And right now it's swinging that you cannot say these words. I mean, the banned word list is ridiculous. You can't even say woman. Like, hello, we're 50% of the population. Like, that word is banned. Like, what do you mean? You can't say diversity and inclusion and belonging and all these things that just feel good for the world that really should be celebrated everywhere. And people are so scared to say the wrong thing, to get in trouble, to be canned, banned, cancel cultured, or to lose their funding, that they are shying away from it. But all those people that we were supporting before still exist, and they're still in our workplaces, and they're still in our communities, and we can't fall through to literally what I feel like is bullying and literal blatant racism at this point. It's really ridiculous, and we need more leaders in organizations to step up and say, I don't give a crap what the president says. I still care about my entire workforce, not just the ones that fit into this heteronormative narrative that we're willing to support without getting in trouble.
I think it's a big ask for those executive directors, whoever, the decision makers are, to take that stance, because, I mean, you can take that stance if you're completely, and probably no company really is, you're completely free from the federal government. Yeah, they cannot, like, they can't do, you're like completely free market. I don't know, you're a grocery store, a mom and pop grocery store in Keene, probably you can get away without any federal funding or any federal help. But I think it's like, even if you're a bank, do you get slapped with 4 times as many investigations and like it ties up tons of resources? Or if you're like even if you're not even directly funded, there's so much punitive stuff that's happening that's like just to bully you, punish you. And so I think it's hard to like ask executives to take that stand, because I mean they are also in charge of like the health of their organization financially. So what do you recommend?
I know. We're getting wildly creative in the field, I will tell you that. I'm working for a municipality right now, and we are literally calling it workplace wellness. We've taken the words all off the website and our webpage that we had built for their DEI efforts, and we've massaged them in a way that they're not on the banned list. It's clear to me that they're still committed to the work, which is important. They are also very afraid of funding. They're also very afraid of what their constituents will say, because they are a municipality and they deal with the public every single day. They're very, very public. And yeah, this honestly sucks. Like, I don't know how to say it any other way. But I also feel like if they can hold on, like the pendulum will swing back for sure. And I think it speaks more to their employees about, we're not backing down, even though they say we have to. And that shows a lot of commitment that we need leaders in organizations to continue to do, even though it stinks that we have to literally massage the language to remove the word woman.
I get that, but I think it's hard because you have, I mean, not everybody is Harvard and can, has infinite money to keep funding the whole thing by themselves for the next 100 years if they want to. And I think it's a really hard question, especially because also you have the economy turning. You probably have, one would assume other funding and donations is probably going to decline a little bit too. And it's going to be not as flush as maybe it was in the last few years. So tell me a bit about your work at the coalition, and what you're going to be doing there, and is basically helping companies figure all of this out kind of the mission now? Or?
The coalition was formed, and I hope I don't get any of these details wrong, I probably will, around 2020. So there was a survey done within the city of Keene, and basically people of color, minority groups were saying, I actually don't feel that safe in this town. It's not as welcoming as you think it is, because when I think about Keene, I think it is a welcoming place. And
But that's your bias because you're
of course it
a white
is.
woman and you're well off and like.
And the survey showed otherwise. And this coalition was formed, and they're very specific on not who's in the coalition, but just making sure all the right groups, and I'm doing air quotes, are represented. So meaning there's someone from like the law enforcement department, from the college, from, minority groups, from just a diverse group of people to think about how can we shift the tide here in Keene and in the Monadnock region, really. What I've noticed, so I've been serving on their workforce resource group. So again, here I was at an organization running a DEI program, leading employee resource groups, and learning a lot about how not to do it. And we would join together on a monthly meeting with a bunch of other people within businesses and organizations and talk about what's working, what's not working, maybe offer trainings and that kind of thing. There was an education group, spin-off subgroup that got pretty active. But for the most part, I think we've been trying to figure out how to move forward. And I think they're finally at the point where, bringing in someone with a little bit more focus and time to literally getting paid to dedicate to move this initiative forward. I'm excited about the progress we really can make. There are so many groups in this town already doing amazing things. We've got Gail Summers and the Multicultural Center that she's trying to open. We've got Keene Pride. We've got the Human Rights Committee. Even the city of Keene has their own DEI branch that they're really trying to work through, and a million others probably.
So do you basically bring them all to a table? Is that the plan?
Yes, trying to, but then think about just in general, how do we make this place more welcoming? For new people that move in, or for anyone that feels different or othered in some kind of way, how do we make sure that they know that they can join the coalition and be part of us just trying to make this a more welcoming place for all people, not just some, but for all. But I think what we're really needing is there's a strategic plan, and now it's just really thinking about, okay, this strategic plan has a million goals on it. What are our main goals right now that we can do, especially in this time that we're in, when people are being so isolated and so ostracized for being just 100% who they are, and to the point where it's dangerous? And how can the coalition come in and maybe offer, trainings on, even think about the rallies that have been happening every weekend in Keene. How can we disagree in a safe manner? How can we come to the table and have hard conversations, even though we have literal opposing views? That's where I really see the coalition trying to get to.
So do you have a lot of conversations with organizations that come to you and they say, well, we like DEIB, and how can we still incorporate that without getting screwed? Do you get those questions a lot from all the EDs at all the nonprofits? They're like, well, we kind of like this, but we also like our funding. So how do we now? Is that something that you guys help with?
We could, for sure. I mean, I would think, in the workforce resource group right now, I would say those are the type of conversations we're having. How are we navigating this within our own organizations? But not at the moment. Exactly the way you worded it isn't quite happening, but it could and should.
Cool. So the last part of this podcast, we always switch gears a little bit, and we talk about what a good weekend looks like for Gina Burke, which hits you unprepared because I forgot to mention it earlier. So you said you have 3 kids. I'm sure you're busy with driving them all over the place. Just wild assumption. But what does a good weekend look like for you?
Well, we always go to Brewbaker's. So if we don't go to Brewbaker's and get a coffee, then the whole thing is shot at that point. But that's usually before of the games or whatever is happening. But I really like to be outside, although it's rained every weekend for the past, 100 or so. But when that's not happening.
Since September.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely like to be out in my yard, hiking, doing something like that. But that's always a good weekend. I like to do a little bit of art, just kind of be outside maybe in the sun when that comes out to shine.
Yeah, not this weekend.
This weekend. Do some art or drawing.
Any favorite places?
I like Goose Pond. I like to walk around Goose Pond. Brewbaker's is a stop for sure. I'm trying to think of where else is cool. Those are kind of our favorites. We like to eat at the Stage. That's a good restaurant. 21 Bar and Grill is great. But I don't know. It's usually kid things, like you said. Basketball tournaments, baseball.
Cool. So thank you so much for being here. That was super interesting. Where can people find you? How can they find you if they have all sorts of DEIB questions, which I'm sure a lot of people do?
I would love to help out. Well, I'm definitely on LinkedIn, so I'm under Gina Burke. People can shoot me an email. Maybe you can put it in like the...
Yeah, in the show notes, we'll put it in there. Yeah,
that would be great. But yeah, I'm around town. I'm on a million boards and coalitions and committees, and I'm sure I'll see people around. But yeah, whatever I can do to help.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, that was a great conversation. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave us a nice review wherever you're listening to this. It really means the world. Our episodes drop every other Friday, so stay tuned for more insightful chats from It's Freitag.